Hello. Good evening.
Hi, how are you?
I'm okay. How are you doing? Long time no see. Where are you right now? Are you in New York?
Yeah, I'm in Brooklyn.
Oh, okay. Do you have
Yeah.
a big apartment in Brooklyn, or is it?
No, no. This is the one spot that gets really good reception. So yeah, I'm here and then my drawing table is right there and that's pretty much it. And my cat is free range tonight. I normally try to put her in the bathroom when I do Zoom calls, but she's not having it, so she might make an appearance.
So, do you design your own books at Fantagraphics?
Yeah, no, I usually come with like an idea of what I want for the design, and then I work with either Jacob or Keely at Fantagraphics, and they put it together, or they come up with something like totally different, and I usually defer to what they do because it's always a better idea than what I come with.
Yeah. Do you know how to do book design though, or not?
I mean, I design my own mini comics, so to that extent, yeah.
Yeah, that's a skill that I wish I had.
Hmm.
Book design. I don't even know how to lay them out. And I remember when I was at TCS, there was like a class. There was like one day where they showed you how to use like Adobe Illustrator or something like that to like lay out
Sure.
a book, and I didn't go. And I
Oh.
think about it every day. I'm like, fuck, why didn't I do that? It's so stupid.
Yeah, yeah. I
So
mean, it's kind of, I mean, I don't want to like disrespect anybody that does that, but from my experience, it's pretty easy. Like, but then again, I'm just doing like lo-fi shit. I'm not really like hyper like concerned with how the mini comics look as long as the pages are there. I'm like, oh, it's good.
yeah, I'm kind of like that too. And mini comics, I just I would just like use a photocopier to shrink them down so that they fit on 5.5 by 8.5.
Mm.
And then like cut them with scissors and paste them down. And then you do the first copy and it has the little line, the shadow line, and you have to
Hmm.
take some white out and erase that, and then do another copy.
Yeah, that's classic. That's the way to do it. That was how I learned.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I would like have to, take my comic pages. Like I was doing this with Nurse, like scanning them on a photocopier and just copying them like endlessly. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
good way to learn.
You go into Kinko's and there's like, it's a Saturday and there's like 4 copiers, but there's like 4 people using them. So you have to sit there and wait.
Those are our people. Like I was in there so much. They always thought that I worked there. It sucked. I
Yeah.
had a bunch of like Kinkos mapped out all over Manhattan. When I used to live in Manhattan, that's when I was doing Nurse. So I would be like, oh, the Upper West Side one, I like gotta get there because there's not a lot of people like on a Saturday. But then, sometimes I'd have to go to like one in Washington Heights. But yeah, all the time people thought that I worked there. And I was like, should I just apply? Like, I'm so good at this. I'm really good at this. And I seem to be more helpful than the people that actually work there.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
big regret. They really
Yeah,
missed
same.
out. Mhm.
I've been in there many times where somebody's having trouble and I have to be like, oh, excuse me, I'll help you. You just, you know,
Yeah.
let me show you how to darken this or something,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
let's open this tray and get the paper jam out.
It's doing God's work, man.
So, did you ever have those times where like you'd go to a show and you'd bring your mini comics and there'd be an artist there that you really admired and you'd be like, hey, this is my comic, and you could see that they were not interested at all? Never-
No, I'm generally pretty conservative when it comes to that kind of thing. I'm kind of shy. I don't really like doing that, but there would be times that people that whose work I knew and really liked would buy the comics, and I felt like, oh shit, like you have a spring in your step for like the rest of the day. But I wasn't really like keen on giving stuff out. I think because I would just flash back to like, oh, I was just in Kinko's for so long doing this. Like I don't want to just give it to somebody who's going to throw it away, you
Right.
know.
Yeah, I did that one time to Dave Eggers. I went
Oh
to a
wow.
Dave Eggers reading and I stood in the line where he was signing books, and I couldn't even afford to buy a book for him to sign, but I brought one of my mini
Mm.
comics, and it's my turn up to talk to Dave Eggers.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
gave him a copy of my comic. I put this in the first Fonte Bukowski book. It was a true story that happened to me, where I gave him my mini comic and he was like, "Oh, I can't really take that right now." But he's like, I think he tried to give me like an address, like the McSweeney's office or something like that, to send it to him. But I always got that, or I got people that would say like, "Oh, something to read on the plane," and I was like, "That's like the polite thing to say," but I'm like, they're not gonna.
Thanks. Yeah. Do you feel yourself just like falling off a
Yeah.
building at that
I'm like,
point?
I just want to be on that cloud with you guys.
Yeah, I can't handle that like level of rejection, so I'm generally pretty reserved with my stuff. But I love like picking up other people's work. Like that's one of my favorite things about going to a show. So I mean, as long as they have it to sell it to me, like I'll usually buy it, you know.
Yeah, I get cool stuff in the mail
Oh yeah?
because yeah, like I'll just like if somebody buys one of my mini comics, I just put my address on the envelope, and so then people just
Oh
start sending me
cool.
their stuff. So
That's
I get a
good.
lot of like surprises in the mail. But so you went to Syracuse, right? I know a little bit about you. I'm prepared.
That's cool, cool. Yeah,
You
I
went to
went to
Syracuse
Syracuse. Mhm.
for what though? Not for art, right?
I studied art history. I got a BA in art history.
Oh, okay, yeah. So my
Yeah.
wife did too. That's awesome.
Oh, cool. Right on.
Um, and you were doing a comic in the college newspaper that everybody hated.
Yeah, I was doing these totally demented, like sick comics. Because it was a daily newspaper, so they needed stuff to run every single day, and they would just take whatever they got. So yeah, I was doing comics back then, and yeah, and then I started doing mini comics, and here I am. Yeah.
But how often were you doing the comic for the newspaper? Like every
Oh,
week?
probably like at least once a week. You
Mm.
know, like I don't even know. Well, I didn't like have a scanner or anything, and I didn't know about like Photoshop or anything. So I would have to like walk into the office and like give them something, and they would have to scan it, and I would just like wait around until like they were done. And yeah, it was
Would
very
you
old
watch
school.
their expression as they read it when you came in?
Just dead in the face, like great, she's back, you know. And yeah, I don't remember really like ever getting a response to them, but you know,
Yeah.
indefatigable, I just I just kept doing it.
Did you save those? Did you clip those out?
No, because they're fucking terrible. And my friend Colleen was just cleaning out her like childhood bedroom in New Jersey, and she found a bunch of clippings of them, and she was like sending me pictures, and I was like, no more,
Oh,
no,
really?
I don't want to know. It's so fucking bad.
What was the subject matter? Like, do you remember any of the?
Humor.
Uh-huh.
I thought I was really funny, and I've since learned that's not really my strong suit in comics. Yeah.
So it was like a joke a week kind of comic.
Yeah, they were just like absurd, jokey, stupid comics, you know. It's like a 18, 19-year-old brain just being so excited to like get published or whatever for the first time and just being like, oh, this is gold. Like, yeah, they're gonna love this. No.
But at the time, you must have been like, pretty excited to see. The first time you see your work in print is there's like this amazing moment where you're seeing your work and it's broken down into little dots, and it's like, oh my God, I've made it. Like, did you feel that way seeing your work?
Yeah, I thought it was cool as hell. And I was definitely like addicted to it the first time I did it. That's why I kept coming back. That's why I probably am still doing what I'm doing, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I felt the same way. Like I did a newspaper strip in Denver, and I was so amazed by the fact that they had taken my work and made like a printing plate maybe or something out of it.
Mhm.
I took it to the photocopier and I would blow it up. I'd blow up my strips so that I could see like the little dots that had become my drawings, and then I would like
Mhm.
cut out like a panel that I liked and then paste that onto my sketchbook, and that would be like my sketchbook cover. It was just like I don't know, like I was addicted to print.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's what I liked about
Yeah.
like, underground comics too, is the fact that these guys just got their own printing presses and were just printing their own comics, like Just these like
Yeah.
stoned hippies, you know?
Yeah, totally, totally. And it's like, wow, I'm impressed by what you were able to accomplish, even though you were probably stoned out of your gourd for the
Hmm.
majority of this. Well, because you think about it, it's like it's the lowest barrier to entry in terms of like print media or really any kind of media. As long as you have access to, like, when I was coming up, it was like if you had access to a Xerox machine, and then it became, oh, if you have like a modem, you can be a cartoonist, and I think that's one of the really cool things about it. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for a lot of different voices to be heard in comics, a lot of different, like, really cuckoo voices too.
Yeah, yeah.
Because when you think about the kind of production that's necessary, it's like only a crazy person would do this. So that's good.
It's good because you can just like declare yourself a cartoonist and people believe you,
Yeah,
you know? Like,
exactly.
do you remember when you first felt like you were a cartoonist?
Um,
Like professional cartoonist, I guess?
I still don't know that I ever really felt it, to be totally
Really?
honest with you.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Do you think you're an author?
no, I don't think of myself that way. I generally just kind of think of myself as an artist.
Okay, yeah.
Um, but I do also write everything I do and I draw everything that I do. So yeah, I guess I'm a cartoonist. That I guess I'll take it. Sure.
Do you carry sketchbooks? Do you do that stuff?
Not really. No. I only really like to draw when I'm at home.
Yeah. See, that's like Porcelino. He doesn't have
Oh, cool.
sketchbooks or anything. He only draws when he needs to, like when he has a story in mind or something otherwise.
Mm. I draw for fun, and I draw when I'm like first thinking about an idea for a story. I'll just like sketch a couple thumbnails for like a fake page and then kind of go from there. But I'm not like a plein air artist. I like to have like a stable place that I work.
Hmm. And how long did it take you to like kind of develop the like drawing style that you have, where it's just like it's your own? You've broken things down, you've simplified them enough to it's like almost like your own visual language that you've created. And was that like a process? Like when you look at those early comics you did for the school newspaper, do they look like what you're doing now, or is it different? You haven't figured it out yet.
No, thank God they don't. I think I Oh, I mean, I was really lucky in that Nurse, the first book I ever did, was really the first time that I ever drew a long form comic.
Mhm.
And so I'm really lucky in that the thing that I used to like figure it out was my first book. So I feel like that, my cat's going to knock something off the counter soon. I apologize. I feel like that was a really good um, intro to like just figuring out how to do a style quickly because same story, I was working full time then and having to go to Kinko's and everything, so the faster I could get it done with all of the visual elements that I wanted, the better. So I would say that probably took 2 years or so, and then it still changes so much all the time. Like I took about a year off after I finished drawing Maids. I finished drawing it around this time last year, and yeah, I took that year off and I started drawing again, and I'm like, oh, this looks different, you know. But I think that's a good thing. I think I like to do different things every time I'm working.
Let's say if you take some time off from drawing, is it hard to start again?
No, no, because I like drawing so much, because when I do comics, I'm only drawing the things that I want to draw.
Hmm.
So I make a point to not really do anything that I don't want to do, which helps, if you can have fun while
Hmm.
you're doing something, that helps you stay the course and keep doing it. So yeah, but I mean, I hope that it'll change for the better. I think it's it's always improving. I mean, you can at least
Yeah,
say that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And you, what stuff were you looking at when you were first getting into comics? Because like, I'm just trying to figure out like where, like what other artists are like in your DNA,
Mm.
your style.
Um, I looked at a lot of manga for sure.
Hmm.
I was a big Junko Mizuno fan. I still am. I really love Junko Mizuno. As I got older, I got really into Mayoko Ano and Kyoko Okazaki, two of like the nastiest, like most ruthless storytellers. I really, really admire both of them. But when I was getting started, I was going to the comic book store all the time in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, where I'm from, and they would let me go in like the adult section, which okay. But when I was like a teenager and I
Oh,
was
boy.
reading like Dave Cooper's Ripple, I really loved that
Oh,
one.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was wild. I'm still really obsessed with that comic. I got the Fanta reprint a couple years ago, and it has this intro by David Cronenberg, and it's like, oh, this is the most perfect edition of this book that could ever exist.
Awesome.
So I loved that. I loved The Max by Sam Keith.
Oh, yeah.
That was a really big one. And it's funny because, like, obviously I wasn't really looking to Dave Cooper or Sam Keith for style necessarily, but
Mhm.
I did really appreciate their approach to storytelling and
Yeah.
that they were telling these stories that were so outside of what I understood comic convention to be. And they were still, as far as I could tell, like really popular and had an audience. And I was like, damn, this is wild. You can really do anything. I read Mouse when I was in sixth grade. I had a really cool English teacher who lent it to me. It might have been too young, but again, whatever. That was another one that really shocked me because I was like, this story could have only been told this way as a comic. I think if it had just been prose, it would have been like a lot of that imagery would have been lost on me as a
Mm,
reader that young. But because it was comics, it really helped me put this, catastrophe into context and help me understand like the brutality of it. So
yes.
those were the ones that were really in my consciousness at that point. Just really dark, treacherous comics.
Yeah.
And here I am, and then Junko Mizuno and Sailor Moon and everything. So it was like
Yeah, yeah,
having
yeah.
having fun in tragedy. I think that was what was appealing to me. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you took, like, a lot of, like, cues on like, pacing, I guess, like, you would have, like, internalized, like, how to pace a story and stuff from those comics?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in particular, I mean, I don't know that I could necessarily say how much I got from Mouse,
Yeah,
but
right.
it's just how clear it made that history of like this date this happens and here's what's happening in the world and here's the like personal significance that this date has to me, like that really stood out to me.
In films, I think you take a lot from films, like, as far as storytelling goes, because I read, Maids,
Mhm.
your new book, which is great, by the way, and
Thank you very much.
I thought when I was reading it, I was like, "This is like watching a movie." Like,
Oh,
if
cool.
they option that, they could just totally just use it as storyboards for the film and, like, not even have to add anything, you know?
Yeah, Hollywood, I'm right here. But yeah, I really like as I got older, my taste in film just like grew and grew. And I recently, like in the last 5 years or so, I started expanding my knowledge of French New Wave, because it's
Mm,
like everybody knows Truffaut and Godard. And I started getting into like Rivette and Chabrol and just really looking a little bit further left, like
mm,
left bank New Wave.
yeah.
Uh, and I was really taken by Claude Chabrol's film La Cérémonie, which stars Isabelle Huppert and Sandra Bonham, and it is loosely based on a novel that is loosely based on the true story of the Pepin sisters, who Maids is about. And I was like, this is so scary. And it's these two actresses whose work I really love, and I would otherwise consider them to be so mainstream and so normal. And yet they managed to terrify me by not really even doing much at all in this story. And I was like, there's something here. I want to try to do a
Yeah.
story like this.
Yeah, what was your entryway into French movies, and we do you have, like, the Criterion Channel? It sounds so basic, but that's like
No, no. A lot of it when I was in high school, I was a perpetually bored teen, and I went to the library like all the time. And I they had a big DVD VHS collection, and I just started working my way down the alphabet. Like started with like All About Eve, and then just kept going. And it was really like whatever they had, I would watch. And I watched Breathless, and I was like,
mhm.
that wasn't a movie. And I remember it like made me really mad. And then also at the same time, French contemporary cinema was taking this really drastic turn. And I remember reading uh, something in Art Forum about these like new French extremity films. And I was like, what is that? You know, and you read more about them, and it's like kind of France's response to like torture porn, like the Saw movies, Hostel, stuff like that. So those kind of, not, I shouldn't say response, but those types of horror films are deeply rooted in New French extremity. And I got really obsessed with those. And I got really obsessed with watching these films that were so like viscerally challenging.
Mhm.
And that, you know, for better or worse, those films had such an impact on me. And then uh, England was also kind of going through its own bizarre moment at the end of the 90s with the young British artists and the Saatchi collection artists. And, you know, so there were these two movements that were happening that were really centrally located in body horror and like the object, like fear of death, fear of pain. And, you know, as a like teen, early 20s, those were like, for whatever reason, so appealing to me. And yeah, that was kind of where my appreciation for like European cinema started. Yeah, in the early aughts, going to the library and then trying to rent movies that really terrified me.
Do you feel like that influences you more for your own work than reading other comics?
Um, it satisfies a different part of my brain, I think,
Mhm.
but ultimately, you know, comics is my favorite medium,
Mhm.
and it always will be. I think it does have a lot to do with those, you know, like forbidden comics I was reading in the back of the comic book store when I was like too young to be doing that. Yeah, I nothing there's no way to tell a story like you can in comics. There's just something about it that has always really just sat so well with me. And you know, and also like I said, it has maybe the lowest barrier to entry. So
Mhm.
while I am really interested in film, I don't think I could have the patience to go make a movie, you know, work with a ton of different people. I like doing things by myself, you know.
I think that's going to be interesting. You know, there's going to be a point where you will make a movie, and then this will be like a funny clip. You know?
I never say never. I mean, I hope you're right. I would like to for
Yeah.
sure, but my default when I think, oh, I have a story to tell, it's always go right to my little drawing table and draw
Yeah.
it. I used to do oil painting in my early 20s, and I loved it, but I was so afraid of setting my house on fire because of like all the like terpenoid and like
Yeah.
the oil and the rags. And I was just like, I know myself, and this really smells. And also at a certain point, like the smell of the terpenoid like really made me nauseous. So I stopped doing
Yeah.
oil painting. I like acrylic, but the nice thing about oil is that you get to build, and I really like doing that. Acrylic I find a little bit stressful because you know it dries so quickly and you have to really finesse it with a bunch of other chemicals. I do like gouache and stuff sometimes, but for the most part I'm pretty happy doing digital coloring, you know, like I don't know, I like just don't really want to get my hands dirty anymore.
But you had an exhibit recently, didn't you?
Yeah,
In Ireland or something?
yeah, in Belfast.
Belfast.
Yeah, isn't that wild? It was
It's
in
amazing.
2000. It was in 2019, and I did do some painting in the gallery. They let me do like a painting installation. So I, I mean, for better or worse, the way that I approach art in general is just I throw an idea out there, and I'm like, yeah, I'll figure this out.
Mhm.
And Ben Crothers, who's the curator at Naughton Gallery at Queen's University Belfast, was like, "Oh, we have room for you to, you know, paint on the walls or do an installation if you would like to." And I was like, "Yeah, well, I'll just paint this panel from Maids, no problem." Not thinking like I haven't painted in maybe 5 years. How am I gonna do this? We ended up like going to Irish Kinko's and making like a translucent copy of this panel so that
Yeah.
we could project it like
Oh
onto a
yeah.
wall. And then I had to like trace it and then be like, oh my god, how do you like mix colors, like what the hell am I doing? But it turned out okay, you know. And yeah, that
How
seems
long
to
were
be the way I
you
have to
there
work.
for? That's amazing.
um thank you. I was there for a week.
Oh,
They brought me over you know, oh gosh, it was in August of 2019, and I sent them a ton of work in like June and July. and then flew over and then worked with a curator to pick out, what we wanted up. And yeah, it was really, really great. I had the best time there.
And you were there for the opening night?
Yeah, I was there for the opening. It was really cute. Everyone was just like so friendly and so sweet, and I got to do a couple talks, and yeah, that was awesome. I like traveling, but it's hard with work and trying to get comics done. So I've only ever been to Iceland and Ireland, and I've been to Iceland twice. I really love it there. But I want to go to more of Europe, and I would love to go to South America. And yeah, there's a lot that I really want to do, but I'm also always like, I don't want to pay for it.
Yeah,
Like, I
yeah,
want
yeah,
somebody else to pay for it.
yeah.
So if France wants to bring me over or whatever for something, I'll, be the first one there. But I'm very like, oh, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, for sure. What did you do any of the comics things in Iceland?
I went to a comic book store when I was
Oh, okay.
there,
They have comic
and
book
I was
stores there?
like, hello. Yeah, they have one.
They
I
have
don't
one.
remember the name of it. In well, as far as I know, in Reykjavik.
Mhm,
And I the first time I went there, I was like really fucked up from jet lag,
mhm.
because we flew late at night, and like I don't know why I did this, but I didn't have like any music saved on my phone, and there was like no Wi-Fi on the plane. And the only thing I had saved on my phone was a recording from Jonestown, like the last night
My
of
God.
Jonestown. And so I listened to that. I know. I listened to that as we were like, so the sun had gone down in New York and it was just coming up in Iceland. And we were like flying into the sunset, and I was listening to the Jonestown tape. So I was really messed up by the time I got there. And then, it was like, what time is it? It was also midnight sun. So it was constantly bright, and it was like 3 in the morning. And somehow I was at this comic book shop looking around, and I was like, oh, I know that artist. And it was like
Yeah.
Matt Weigel, and it was like all these umlauts and stuff. I was like,
Oh my
oh.
God. How long did it take you to do Nurse Nurse to like, finish that story?
Mm, I drew it for a really long time. I drew it from like 2007 to like 2010, I want to say, because I was just figuring out how to draw, and I also had just moved to New York like halfway through it, and I had a job, and I was trying to figure out how to balance all these things. So it took a while, but it's 160 pages. That feels pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty
Yeah.
substantial. And it was like it was the hip shit. I remember like it was really cool.
Oh,
I
thank you
hadn't
very much.
met you or anything, but like, I remember seeing copies of it because I was also distributed by Dylan Williams,
Oh, nice. Right on.
Flammo and
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, and so like I
Mhm.
remember I'd go to his table and there was like Nurse Nurse, and I was just like, well, it didn't look like anything else that was out at the time. And
That's
it
really
actually,
cool.
what, it might be one of my favorite things you ever did, like for nostalgia reasons, because that was like such an interesting, fun era of,
That was a cool time. That was a really cool time to be making comics. And it felt, in the same way that like having comics in the newspaper felt really good. It felt really good to like have something out that people were responding to, and not like my newspaper comics, I should say. It felt good to have something that, people thought was different. And I was like, oh, there must be, even though I feel a bit weird about it, I'm always like, I always feel like I'm outside of whatever's happening. To feel a little included felt really, really good. And yeah, it still does.
do you still feel like an outsider in comics?
Yeah, because I don't think that anyone knows what I'm doing, including me. And I feel, I've gotten a lot of really, really nice things.
Mhm.
But I always felt a little like, misunderstood. That's probably a good way to feel,
Mhm.
so because you don't want to be too inside. Like, it's good
Yeah.
to
You
always feel a bit off.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen the people that are on the inside in the comics community. You don't want to be in with them, trust me. You look better on the outside.
But in this way, as cartoonists, we probably all feel a little bit maligned. We all feel a
Sure.
little bit like outside.
Mm.
So they probably see themselves as that too, you
Yeah,
know?
true.
Because I think cartoonists they have this like insecurity complex about the medium because it doesn't get the money, or it doesn't get the same kind of
Oh,
accolades or
yeah.
prestige.
Mhm.
But I also think that's so freeing. So I don't really mind it. But I don't know. I would like to, now that I have, you know, uh enough goodwill, like I actually would really like to publish other people. I've been thinking about like starting an imprint, or starting like a mini grant, like award system or something like that. Just because I'm sure that there are other people that are out there that are like me, that want to make work that feels a little left of center, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah. So, and I love working with Fantagraphics, and I feel like that's been a really good home for me. But I also have been thinking, oh, what would it be like to just the next book, just do it all myself? I think about that a lot. I was like sad to not be out on tour with maids. Not,
Yeah.
it's one thing to be like, it- I think that also lends to this like outsider feeling, because I feel so like, oh, I had this book come out and people seem to really enjoy it. It feels like it's happening on a different planet though, like I have there's no gratification at all, that feels like tangible.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
yeah, but
I
I
totally
do
relate.
love, yeah, I love making mini comics though, because you feel like, oh my gosh, if
Hmm.
people are into it at this stage, like that's a really good sign.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I had two books come out in 2020, and I feel like I didn't
Mm,
really hear about them. Like I didn't seek out. I don't seek out my own press anymore because I don't want to see too much hatred. But I don't have like a Google alert set up for my name or anything because I don't know. But you're right though. Like you put out these books, and it does feel like it's on another planet that you've
yeah,
sent something to.
yeah.
So did Dylan ever tell you like what artists were buying Nurse Nurse? Was he like
Mhm.
good at being like, hey, Jason Shiga really likes Nurse Nurse?
um Not, I don't think so. I don't really remember.
He was
Um,
encouraging to you, definitely.
yeah, yeah, definitely. In like other ways. Honestly, to me, just that Dylan thought it was cool was
Mhm.
really meaningful, because I was like, this guy is so cool, and he, you know, like getting started in comics in like 2010, it was just like a wall of guys in flannel shirts, like standing there, and so I felt so like,
With a
well, this
beard.
is, yeah, with a beard or like shaved head or whatever. And that's good, like that's cool, but I was just like, ooh, I don't know that I see myself fitting in here. And that Dylan was, one of those cool flannel guys,
Yeah.
and he liked what I was doing and told me to keep doing more. I was like, oh, well, that just shows that like really anything is possible.
And he agreed to publish your book right before he passed. Is that what happened? Or
Yeah,
because you're the
yeah.
last thing that Sparkplug published, I think, right?
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, I remember like as clear as day putting a little package together to send to Dylan and be like, oh, let me know if you would ever want to put this out. Here's what I think it would look like. And he was so sweet. He was really just the best. So,
And what about your second book, Operation Margarine? Was that your second
mhm.
book?
Yeah.
Did you send that around, or was that a Chris Pitzer thing where he just came to you, and how does that happen?
I went to Chris because I was really impressed by the books that Ad House put out, and I still am. I think he's a really great designer and a really great publisher. And so I went to him because I was like, I want to have a beautiful Ad House book, and I told him what I was thinking about doing, and I think I showed him maybe 20 pages or so, and then he like brought me a little contract to sign, and
Uh,
he's very like old school, like stationary. I
yeah,
think that's I think that's really cool.
yeah. And he seems like he's really into being the guy who like gives artists a step as they're just about to get to a bigger publisher. Like he
Mhm.
wants to be like their step into that other world because you couldn't like stay and just keep doing books with him. I don't even know if he really likes that. I think he just likes to publish like one thing from each artist or something.
Mm. You should interview him. Chris is awesome.
Yeah, I should. He is a really cool
Yeah.
guy. And yeah, I think we had I think my book came out from Ad House the same time as yours
Mhm.
because I vaguely remember us being at Heroes Con together at the Ad House table.
Oh my God, that's right. Oh,
Yeah,
I forgot about that. Yeah. God, I like Heroes so much.
yeah, it's a great show, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really cool.
I hope that one comes. I can because now I live in South Carolina. I could just go up.
Oh, okay.
It'd be like it's like my closest good show.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I'm sure it will be back.
Yeah,
People love that show.
I remember whenever you're at like a show like that where it's kind of like a mix of the like hero stuff and then
Mhm.
like indie stuff, you always get like wind up doing some podcast with some guy who's like in a Ghostbusters uniform, and they're like, "Come, come on over."
The best. I love doing that. And they are always the most friendly,
Oh yeah,
sweet people.
yeah.
Like, and they don't want to talk to me about Claude Chabrol and young British art. Like, and that's my default. And I'm
Mhm.
trying to work on that. But they're just so game to talk to you about anything. And I
Yeah.
feel like sometimes I just make like I circumambulate around a point for like 20 minutes and then like, yeah, cool, yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm very into that level of enthusiasm.
Yeah, that like weird part like where you're like, hey, I'm gonna leave the table. I'm just gonna use the restroom, guys. And you're like, okay. And then you go out, and then some guy goes, hey, hold on a second. Are you Katie Skelly? Come here, come here, come here. Here, can you just hold this microphone? Look at the camera. Just say you're watching Geek Cavern TV.
Yeah, and I'm
You're
like,
like, all right.
absolutely. I'm always like, yes, let me pull focus. And then everyone's like, I like to see that though. I always think that's cool.
Yeah, yeah.
I I have a lot of respect for cosplayers because I do always think of them as like kind of fashion misfits, you
Huh?
know? And I feel like they're always like on the road to like getting really into clothing design, but
Hmm.
they're a little mixed up between like fandom and that form of expression. And I think sometimes they find it, you know, and I think that's really cool. So I'm very pro cosplay.
Was Maids the first nonfiction work you ever did?
I did a short story about Tanya Harding before
That's
that.
right. What happened to that?
Yeah.
Why did
I
you do
did
that?
it. I did it.
You never did it.
I'm sorry?
You never published it, did you?
No, I didn't publish it. I did that just for the web. Yeah. So I have a couple comics that I did just for the web. I think that was the longest of them. I might do it. I might put it out sometime, you know, or I might do a longer version of it. But once I'm like done with the comic, I feel so done. You know, I'm
Hmm.
like I don't really unless it's coming out as a book from somebody, I don't really like look back very much, you know?
Yeah. Do you not like it when you put out a book and then all of a sudden you have to go and talk about it and you're just like, I don't.
I kind of forget what I did. And I did an interview with Gary for the Comics Journal a few months ago about maids. And it was really like a deposition. Like he went over every plot point and I just kind of forget about what I did.
Mm,
you know, I'm very into it in the moment, but I like to have these like amnesia breaks between comics.
mm,
And so I once it's done, I just, you know, do
mhm.
that because then I want to think about the next thing. And
Yeah.
so Gary's asking me all these questions like, now when Leah goes into this room, what is that, you know, what's the significance of it? And I was like, did that happen? Like I didn't have a copy of the book in front of me and I just felt so like owned by Gary because he was schooling me on my own book. And I was like, you know, what can I say, bud? You're right, you win.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Congratulations. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I just the closest thing I can think of in comparison is like when you give birth and then you want to have another child later and your brain just tricks you into being like that wasn't so bad, you know, like have do it again. And
Yeah.
I feel like I have to have that same like forced amnesia in order to go back and do it again because it is so much work and it can be so miserable. Even no matter how much you like it can still really be a pain in the ass.
Yeah. Did you have to do a lot of interviews for Maids when it came out?
I did a few that were really nice. The nice thing was people were that I talked to were so enthusiastic
Mm,
and they knew so much about it, and that was helpful because you know I always try to like have my media like talking points of like
mm,
here's the line about the book and here's what it means and you know
mm.
whatever. So when someone comes and they're prepared already and I don't have to like do all of that. That's always a nice thing. But yeah, I did one with Publishers Weekly. That was good. The Gary one feels like the biggest one just because I it was
Yeah.
so long
Yeah.
and it was literally like the transcription of everything that I said, which is so embarrassing because
Uh,
it's just like the maids, like it just I'm just like, oh my God, Gary, please do me a favor. Please, you know, but it
yeah.
is what it is.
Yeah, I have trouble with that stuff too. I'm similar where like when I'm done with a book, I'm just kind of done with it, and I
Mhm.
have to keep moving forward.
Well,
Like
you
I
do
always
so much.
well I always I think about this thing that Kim Deitch said in this
Mm,
issue of Comic Bus. He had an interview in it.
mhm,
He
mhm,
said this thing where he's like, the secret is you never stop drawing. Like when he reaches the end of a book or when he knows the ending is coming, he starts the next book so that he's
mm,
never done. Like his mind is never at rest. And that's why I think he's aging the best out of all the underground cartoonists. Is like his mind is always working. He's always like
mm.
actively thinking about stuff. And so I took that to heart and I'm kind of like similar. Like I always want to have a project that I'm working on. But the problem with that is that then the time comes to promote some book that I did, and to me, I'm like, that's done. I don't know. I have nothing to say about that. Like it's done. And especially if it's like a historic book, I don't, I don't take in any of the information. Like once I've like read all I need to read to make this story. As soon as that story is done, I empty. It's like the garbage can on my computer. That shit is
Right.
out.
The cycle,
I don't
yeah.
retain any of that. So then all of a sudden, like I remember when the hypo came out, people were like trying to interview me about Abraham Lincoln, and I'm like,
Mm.
I
He was great. What can you say, folks?
don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the same way. And that's why like the next thing that I'm writing is fiction. And it's gonna be such a relief to not have to be like, on February 2nd, 1933, Leia and Christine Papin killed the mistress and daughter of the house that they worked for. And then it'll be nice to just be like, yeah, this is what it is. You
Yeah,
figure it out, you
yeah.
know.
Was that more challenging doing something that was nonfiction?
It was different, but it felt good. It didn't feel like it was too uphill or anything because that story was so wild and it felt like in this weird way something I would have wanted to write anyway. And there were a few people that reached out to me and said, "Oh, I didn't even realize that that was a true story. I just
Mhm.
read it and I thought it was a Katie Skelly story." And I was like, "Oh, that's really cool," you know.
Yeah.
Um, but it wasn't too bad because it wasn't something that everybody knew about, that people would be like, "Oh, you missed this
Yeah.
detail."
Yeah.
There's so little that was known about the case, that I had a lot of opportunity to fill things in and
Mm.
have fun, so it didn't feel too bad.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you used your artistic license on that story.
Oh, totally, yeah. Well, it was cool because, I have an older sister, and when I was little, I was very shy, and she would do so much for me. Like I would be so shy, I like couldn't like order if we were in a restaurant. Like she would do it for me, or
Mm.
like in school and stuff, like she would talk for me. And so I just based so much of that relationship on me being shy and being a very like anxious child, and the scenes where Leia's hands are really red,
Uh-huh.
that happened to me. When I remember one time, like my sister and I got into a fight or something, little, and my hands got all red,
Mm.
and my mom was like, "You can't control yourself, like look how red your hands are."
Mm.
And it's so out of character for my mom to say something like that too. Like it was very, very observant and kind of poetic, and so I used that in the book, and I was like, I would like to take a lot of these things that are like lodged in my psyche and put them somewhere because I think that they are such interesting elements.
Mm.
And yeah, that was a really good experience. I liked writing that way. So I'm going to try to keep writing more things like that have me but not me.
Yeah. And how long did it take you to do that book in particular?
Mates was only about a year. Um
Yeah, that's great.
yeah, which was really it was something that felt so easy, even though a lot of the book was me pulling back, like you said, like taking things out, simplifying it, taking it down, because I was like, my impulse was to throw everything at it and to make really opulent rooms and costumes and big melodramatic scenes. And I would start doing them and I would be like, this doesn't feel right. Like, take it out, take it out, take it out. Um, yeah, so that was like editing myself as I was working on it was probably the most difficult thing because I would get something done and be like, "Oh, this looks great," and then be like, "I don't want to use this."
Yeah. Is that like a common time? Like, is it take a year usually to do a book for you? Or no, it takes longer than that. I mean, we talk about nurse, of course, but like if you're publishing something, because you'll chop it up into like little into comics, like mini comics, you
Mhm.
start publishing, and that seems like it usually goes for a couple of years or something of selling those, and then
Yeah, I've generally been able to get something out every 2 to 3 years, which feels
Mhm.
like a good rhythm, from start to finish. A project can take me like a year to a year and a half, maybe a little longer, depending on what it is. I feel like My Pretty Vampire took a long time.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that was just because I started drawing it one way and then I pitched it to Fantagraphics and they said, no, thank you. And so I went back and I redrew it a totally different way. And then they said, okay.
No kidding. I never
Mhm.
heard that.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Drawn
Eric said
differently.
no, and I lorded over him all the time.
How can you tell me about like what kind of things they wanted you to redraw?
It wasn't so much redrawing it as Eric just said he didn't get it. And I
Oh,
think
okay.
sometimes that is my like psychic wound of when I'm like, I'm an outsider. Nobody
Mhm.
hoo. Yeah, I was doing it in black and white at first, and I sent it to Eric like that, and he was just like, I don't get it. What is this? And I was like, okay. And then I was like, well, what are the comics that I really like? Because at that point, it was like doing another black and white comic was kind of doing the same thing for me. And I
Mhm.
was like, well, I really like Guy Pellards and I really like Guido Crepax and these big splashy European comic like album comics.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? It wouldn't hurt to just try this. And redrawing it, doing it in color. I changed the way that I ink. I started double inking all of the figures to make them look a little bit more painterly.
Huh.
And yeah, so that was how I developed that, because I was just like, I need something to make this stand apart. And in doing that, I discovered all these things that I didn't know that I love to draw. I loved looking at like Jean Roland films and Jess Franco and real like European softcore sleazy vampire movies. I was just so happy to try to like replicate those in what I was doing.
Mhm.
And they have this like secret kind of language and poetry unto themselves. And I was like, oh wow, this is that's why I think like getting rejected, even though it is my number one fear, is actually the best thing for me. When someone tells me no, I get really determined to like find the workaround, because I'm so, even though I don't like feeling rejected, I also don't ever want to miss out on any of the things that I really want. And like I really wanted to fan a book,
Yeah.
so I was like, I gotta find that way in.
So adding color helps with the clarity of the storytelling as well, right? Because
Yeah, it's such a relief, like you doing black and white only can be so stressful because you're like, God, I have to like differentiate all of these forms. I have to make this
yeah,
make sense. I think it's doing it on hard mode for
yeah,
sure. And not that color is easy, but it feels easier to feel my way through that than to feel my way through doing a big complex black and white composition. Yeah.
yeah. I finished the book and I just like went and had the thing printed out, even though I wasn't finished coloring it yet. So like half of it is in color, half it's not, just so that my wife could actually read it to know what I've been working on. And she was like, as soon as like the color section is over, she's like, now I'm getting confused about the some of the characters. It's like the color was helping identify who was who and stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
it really
It's
does
good.
like add an element to it. So you would never go back to black and white, you think, or what?
No, because I never say never about
Oh
anything.
yeah.
I only took one law class in my entire life, and the only thing I learned from it was don't speak in absolutes. So I don't say never or always, or I try not to. That's the one thing
Mhm.
that I took away from that.
Yeah.
But I would love to work in black and white again. It's just a matter of finding the right project for it. And what I'm writing now is like super colorful, so I feel like I can't. It won't be this one, but maybe it'll be another one, or working on something in a totally different format. I'm kind of open to anything really.
Do you write all of your stories out first before you draw them?
When I say write, it's so loose.
Mhm.
Like I really like to just have a really good outline of what I'm doing. And sometimes I'll script some things if they feel like, okay, I really have to convey something here that's very important to the rest of the story. But for the most part, I like to work in a way that is dynamic and that I can change things as I'm working, again, because like you said, it takes so long to do something. If you're going to be working on something over like a 2-year stretch, the
Yeah.
idea of just being like, I have to do like XYZ thing because I said I was, that can get so boring. And
Yeah.
there's always, it's nice to have room for improvisation, you know?
Yeah, I feel the same way.
Mhm.
And with Nurse, did you know how that was going to end?
I always knew how it was going to end. Yeah. But it was just a matter of like getting from point A to point B.
Yeah, I always feel like that too. It's like writing a graphic novel. It's like, hey, everybody, hop in the car. We're going to California. And they're like, do you know how to get to California? You're like, no, but you just head west and eventually we'll get there. You know?
Yeah, exactly. What else can you do?
But for maids, I mean, you kind of have the structure already. I mean, the story exists. So then you just basically
Mhm.
like, this is the skeleton for me to build off of, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah. It was really a matter of like figuring out, do I want to, how much of their lives do I want to do, and how much of the aftermath do I want to do? And it became very apparent that I didn't want to do any of the aftermath because they stood trial, and it was a very dramatic, like sensationalized trial. It was huge in the French papers, and I was like, nothing is going to be less interesting to convey than a media scandal. Like, like, I think that we're so jaded to the image and so jaded to media now that I'm like, there's no way that I could convey that in a reliable way in a comic. But what I can convey is the brutality of the crime. And so I chose to stop it right after that.
and was the fact that they were Catholics, is that something that you related to because you were raised Catholic?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just this sort of like brutal mysteries of the church, I would say, um going growing up Catholic and going to mass every Sunday and just being surrounded by, the stations of the cross painted on the walls, all the different
Yeah.
stations, and it's just Jesus bleeding and bleeding and bleeding. And the tabernacle at the church that I went to growing up it was beautiful. It was gold, and the door had this image of a pelican with like its arms, its wings stretched out. And do you know this image?
Oh, no.
It's like a famous Catholic, especially Catholic parable about a pelican that pecks itself,
Mhm.
and bleeds to feed its children.
Whoa.
And this is so beyond anything that we understand about birds or nature or anything.
Uh,
But I was just obsessed with that image. I was like, so there's vampire pelican babies out there. What are we talking about? Even as a child, I was like, okay, it's not right.
yeah.
But there's something about, I could probably like draw it from memory. I was so obsessed with it.
Is there like when you're looking for something? I mean, I guess you're not ever looking for something nonfiction to draw a comic about, right? But when you stumble upon a story that has some kind of personal element to you, is that what kind of attracts you to telling that story?
Yeah, I like
I mean,
telling
not Tanya,
stories.
right? I mean, what did you relate to with Tanya Harding?
I won't tell. I like stories about girls and women who do what they have to in order to survive. There's something, I think all of my stories are about survival ultimately. And I only really recently noticed that a lot of them are also rooted in work, you know?
Huh.
Even Nurse is about having this little space nurse job, trying to do a good job, trying to be like a meaningful person, and trying to contribute in some way. And that's, I would say, probably the um, like driving focus of my life too. Is just always trying to be useful, trying to fit in somewhere or make some place to fit into, you
Huh.
know.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that tends to be what I really like. Yeah.
Are you an introvert?
I don't know. I never took one of those tests. I actually don't think so, because the way that I unwind is talking to other people.
Okay.
And I feel like that's not right.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I think I'm an introvert, but I like doing this channel. I like talking to other cartoonists.
Yeah, this doesn't seem very introverted.
Yeah, that's right.
Because you're putting it, it's not just this, but you also publish it, and
That's right.
and
Yeah,
it's really cool. Like, it's a really good resource for people
sure.
that are into comics to have.
Yeah, you gotta do this stuff now.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
for sure. I started doing a podcast recently.
oh, really? Didn't you had a
Yeah.
podcast with Sarah Horrocks for a while, right?
I did, yeah, for like 2 years, called Trash Twins, but I just started one with my friend Sally Madden. She's a cartoonist as well. It's called Thick Lines, and it's just us talking about comics that we really like or comics that we really don't like.
Oh,
Um, yeah, we just did our 9th episode on Vampirella, so
oh,
we're
cool.
doing a lot more, and I love. It's just nice to have a connection to comics in some way that's not a drawing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Is it a weekly podcast or?
Yeah, we took like 1 week off, but for the most part, it's been weekly.
I just got a web store. Like I've
Okay.
been making comics for like 15 years. I like just
Mhm.
finally was like, oh, I should have a web store.
Never too late. Never too late.
Yeah, I'm like really behind on a lot of that stuff, you know. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, let me ask you, do you feel like an insider or an outsider at this
Of
point?
comics?
Yeah.
No, I think I'm an
You
outsider.
think so?
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. I don't because I don't know what's going on. I'm not on comics Twitter. I'm not on any of the like comics
There's
message.
nothing going on comics Twitter. Let
Yeah,
me tell you.
but like
I'm
no,
just like the biggest shit poster of all time. You
okay.
don't have to worry about it.
But like the message groups and stuff like that, like on Facebook or whatever, like I'm not in any of those. Yeah, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
think so. I mean, I feel like I'm just kind of off in my corner
Hmm.
exploring my own interests and sharing them, I guess. I don't, you know.
Well,
But
people seem really responsive to it. And I feel like working with the model that you do and having, a reliable base of people that are really interested in it, that's like a major success in my opinion.
oh, thank you. Wow.
Not that you need it from me, but I'm just saying.
Oh, I need it, trust me.
We all do, I
What
think.
is this thing I heard that you see with numbers, you can tell what color they are?
Synesthesia.
Is that a real thing?
It feels real to me.
You know, actually, it's funny because I remember I heard one, you said that 7 is yellow.
Seven's yellow. Mhm.
That makes sense to me because 7 is my lucky number. Like
Oh, okay.
I was born on July 7th. And
Cancer.
yeah, and my
Mm.
childhood home was 133, which is adds up to 7.
Oh, right. I remember from the book. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. And I see the number 133 every single day. Every single day. I even promised my wife, I'm like, watch, like we're like 133, and
We're
we'll be
gonna see
watching a
it.
movie, and I'll be like, she'll be like, I have to use the bathroom, I'll pause it, and it'll be like, 130. Like no
Mm.
matter what, like I'll get comments on something, 133. Like I don't know. It's so weird.
Yeah, I feel like I see 73 all the time.
Oh,
Um, it's just this weird thing. I first started seeing it like in Krapax comics, and then I was like, I can't get away from 73. And then like so much of my favorite films and my favorite records and stuff are 73. I don't know. It's just one of those things.
wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So okay, so what color is or what number is red to you?
3.
Oh, okay.
But it's experiencing sensations, unrelated sensations, like, at the same time. So when I see like an animated GIF,
Mhm.
my head, I make like a drum pattern that goes along with it. And I remember like asking somebody like, "Do you hear that? When you look at that, do you hear that?" And they're like, "No." Like, you need to go to the doctor. But I
Wow.
found out about it a few years ago because I read in an interview that Richard D. James, Aphex Twin, has it, and I was like, "That sounds made up." Like, because he's such a like trickster. I was like, he made up like a
Yeah.
symptom that he has, and then I looked it up, and sure enough, it was real. So yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. Interesting. I remember I watched a documentary on Bauhaus the other day,
Oh, cool.
and
The
uh,
band.
no, the
Oh,
artist.
okay.
See, we're coming from two different worlds.
I know. I know.
But like Walter Gropius said that a square is always red. And he
Oh,
said, even if it's a black and white, if it's just a line, it is intrinsically red. It's just like,
there you
wow,
go.
cool.
There you go. That's it.